What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Real Moves podcast. My name is Jonathan Gonzalez, and we're here with...
I'm Jeff Luna.
And today we are in the presence of a couple of commercial real estate agents, Mr. Michael Simpson and Cedric Farrell. Welcome, you guys. Glad to have you on.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for coming on.
Thanks for having us here.
Of course. For anybody out there who doesn't know who you guys are, what you guys do, just give us a little lowdown. Who are you guys, and what do you do exactly?
Go ahead, Coach.
Sure. I'm Cedric Farrell. I own a brokerage, it's Sperry Commercial Global Affiliates. I'm a broker within that brokerage. We have about 5 agents. We primarily focus on commercial real estate, investment sales. We do leasing, multifamily homes, retail. That's what we do every day.
Awesome.
There you go.
Nice. Michael Simpson, and I started off as a residential real estate agent. I was doing 100 deals a year, got a referral for a commercial property. Somebody said, hey, can you help me do this commercial deal? I said, sure, and kind of fumbled my way into commercial real estate and fell in love with commercial real estate. And today I focus mostly on training, coaching, and consulting. We still do some deals, some commercial deals, not really any residential deals anymore, but mostly we focus on commercial real estate training, consulting, and coaching.
Nice.
Awesome.
Nice.
For people out there who happen to be in residential real estate and they're wanting to get into the game of commercial, what are some of the benefits as to why they should even get in that market, and what's maybe one of the first steps they should take to go that route?
Well, I think for me, the things that jumped out were it's more logical. It's not so emotional. That residential space can be really emotional. People buy and sell because of divorces and job transfers and kids and babies and all that stuff. So it's a highly emotional environment, right? Mm-hmm. For the most part. The commercial space is much more logical, much more 9 to 5, not really the weekends, the open houses, putting people in your car, driving around. For me, I was loving that, right? Because I was not into any of those things I just said, basically, even though I had to do that stuff. And so those would be the biggest things. Of course, the commissions are much larger. Yeah. My first commercial deal, and Coach Cedric, I'm sure, has lots to share about this as well, but my first commercial deal was $52,000. And it was, at the time, my average commission was $3,500 was the average sales price of $125,000. Average commission was about $3,500. So when I closed that deal and got my $52,000 check, it was I still have a copy of it to this day because it's like the biggest check I ever received at that time. Yeah. And it was like however many homes that is. So obviously that's a big benefit is the commissions.
Yeah.
Yeah, commissions are definitely a big deal. I've figured out now, especially being the broker, how to give the escrow company wiring instructions so they can wire it directly into my bank. Nice. That's a great feeling to be able to have that. Another benefit for residential agents to move into the commercial space, or at least understand the commercial space, is that they can increase their income by basically making referrals. They have to know what they're looking for. They have to understand what they're listening for. And once they do that, they can refer businesses. We get a lot of business from the referral basis, from folks understanding that that's not something that I can do. That's not my space. And we do the same. We refer things back. Michael mentioned that he moved away from the residential. I'm in the same boat as that. So when I do get a referral inquiry, I'll refer that to a residential agent. So it expands your business. I just wrote a $15,000 referral check. And that agent probably spent 2 hours in the time frame in order to get that. They made the referral. They knew what they were supposed to do. They helped when there were a couple bumpy things that went inside of that. But it expands their income and expands their business, basically.
Awesome. So take us back then. So today, you guys operate 2 very successful commercial real estate businesses. You're a broker and an agent. And where did this all start? Did you guys start out of the gate, 18 years old, gun-ho, or what age was it, and how'd you start?
I'm sure Michael has a better story. I'll let you tell your story first.
Better, but I talked about how residential real estate, doing 100 deals a year, highly successful residential business, right? And then the commercial comes along, and I fall in love with commercial real estate, essentially. And then after that, I opened up Keller Williams franchise in Long Beach, California, and opened up a second one and a third one, and grew to about 600 agents. Wow. And kind of just got burnt out with managing and being a broker of record. And I was also, one of the things that happened when I opened the franchise is you had to do training. So we started doing training and scheduling. I'd go to all the other agents and say, hey, you're great at listings, do a listings class. And you're great at buyers, do a buyers class. And you're great at objections, do an objections class. And then everyone started saying to me, well, what are you doing, right? And so so I had to start doing what I was asking everyone else to do. And, I was like, well, obviously commercial real estate. So let me start doing classes on commercial real estate. And it just took off. People would show up and they'd bring their friends from other offices. And then next thing I know, their friends are asking if I can go do it at their office. And so I'm like, well, I never really thought about it, but okay. And then I realized, wow, there's all this demand for this, and there's nobody out there really doing this. This is a business. This is a company. So I launched a second company, the NCREA, and that's how the NCREA was born.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And one thing that sticks out to me is doing 100 deals a year, just regular real estate. That's
no easy feat.
You don't even hear people doing that now. Yeah. So that's a big accomplishment. And being that successful and just going into commercial, it's a pretty different space, right? Would you say that you kind of got burnt out at just selling like the regular stuff, like just regular homes and that?
Yeah. Well, I was in an office. So I was in an office that I had the first time buyers neighborhood. My mentor that took me under her wings, Cindy Verdugo, was awesome. Just a great friend of mine to this day. I'm so grateful that she did that and showed me the ropes, showed me how to farm and knock doors and get listings, right? But I was in a first-time buyer's neighborhood, and then we have Bixby Knolls, we have Belmont Shore, we have all these other neighborhoods, and everyone else's average sales price at that time was about $500,000, $500,000, and I mentioned mine was only $125,000. So when we had the awards, I'm competitive, right? So I wanted to be, number one. I wanted to win, right? And so when we were doing those awards, I had to close 5 transactions to their 1, basically, in order to compete and get those awards. And so that's really what my focus was kind of silly. It was just all about, winning, basically. And so that's what caused me to get more efficient, more effective, and be able to, do volume.
Yeah. A couple questions on that, just for perspective. Around what year was this?
That was around 89, 90. Okay.
And then those $125,000 price points, what neighborhoods, what markets were those?
West Side, West Long Beach.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a little bit different than the Belmont Shores and all that stuff.
Come on.
You're in Jordan and all those areas, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, a lot different.
Yeah, much different. Now, how do the two of your businesses tie in together now?
Yeah, and so... Well, go ahead and then...
Well, yeah, exactly. And so my path from a corporate standpoint or professional standpoint, I started out in corporate. I spent about 15 years doing corporate jobs, and eventually I worked my way into owning a franchise company, and I partnered with another individual, and we sold probably close to 100 different franchises. It was one of those organizations where companies used us to sell their franchise, and so that's how we got that done. Come 2008, 2009, the downturn came. It took 4 times as many calls to get half as many deals. And so I went back into the corporate world and worked for Waste Management for a couple of years. Had a nice job, nice territory, and got the phone call one day. You're doing a great job, but we're going in a different direction. And that's when I took a step back and decided, what can I do to control my own destiny and focus on what I can control versus having someone else call me, because I'm still going to work regardless of what that is. And so I looked at financial planning, I looked at recruiting, and then I looked at real estate. And I had a mentor similar to Michael. I called him up and said, hey, I want to explore what real estate is and what it has to offer. Here's what my background is. And he took me under his wings. It's Paul Cott. And Paul probably has some listings around here. And Paul took me in and he had so much business, he was just basically throwing stuff over the wall. Here, go take care of this. Go take care of this. Yeah. A lot of times people ask, how long did it take you to get your first listing? Like 2-3 weeks, something like that. And
it's
it was
mentor right there.
Exactly. So we were off to the races from there. It was kind of mentor and kind of necessity until this day. I talk to Paul at least every 3 or 4 weeks.
He's a great trainer too.
Goes on that. He's a really good trainer, and he had a really good trainer in his office, and so that worked out well. Paul's office focused on commercial and residential work, and he still does both of those. Eventually, I found Keller Williams, moved over to that, and the Keller Williams brand primarily, especially at that time, and this is 2011-12, was primarily residential. They were just launching their commercial side. So I did quite a bit of residential work there. And then I helped them launch their Laguna Niguel commercial branch because I wanted to work with investors, and I had started doing that. And that's how I found Michael. So, a long way to get to your question. Someone said, hey, I saw this guy talk about commercial real estate, and I went to the next one, and I went to the next one, and I went to the other one over again. And eventually I figured out, this is what I wanted to do. And so I called Michael and said, hey, can I help teach this stuff that goes along with it? And so that's how our paths crossed. And then after a couple of years, I bought the franchise, and we primarily focus on commercial real estate now. I also do some coaching with Michael for some of the students that he trains and educates about commercial real estate.
And when I met Coach Cedric, he would, like he said, it was in a class. And so he showed up in a class, and then he showed up in another class. He showed up in another class. I don't know, maybe
at least 3 or 4, maybe 5.
Handful. And he stands out, right? Because he's knowledgeable and sharp and smart guy. And so he stood out immediately. And so I kept noticing, I'm like, because whenever someone keeps coming back, I'm like, they're going to succeed, right? They're going to crush it.
Either that or they're slow, one of the two.
Yeah. And so, obviously when we talked about working together and having him help coach and things, it was a no-brainer. And it's been 4 years? 5?
Yeah, almost 5. It'll be 4.5 years or so. Yeah.
That's great.
Okay. I'm kind of curious. So you said 2008, right? That was like a pain point for a lot of like people in the real estate field. Mm-hmm. And, you guys being in the game a long time, I spoke to, because I'm younger, right? I started in real estate in 2017, and everyone, when I first started, they all said 2008, like it was like doomsday, right? And now doing your research into it, or doing my research, like it was obviously fraudulent loans, right? And did you guys ever, kind of see anything, like any red flags? Because everyone says it was just like a halt, like it was one day to the next, like, banks stopped lending. What's your perspective on that?
So are we filming right now? So and the reason why I was going to throw my wife under the bus because she was on the lending side.
Okay.
Fraudulent is probably a strong word in that they were just looser more than anything else. For me, I wasn't involved really with that. However, the way that we helped a lot of people acquire franchises was through home equity lines of credit. So they got a lot of those things, and some of them succeeded and some of them didn't along the way. So I was more on the outside looking in. Yeah. However, it was a lot more difficult for individuals, one, to find jobs, and two, to have equity in their homes because their home values were just dropping like a lead balloon. And that's why it took so much effort to try to get individuals to get a loan, find a business. Businesses were shutting down quite a bit. And so that was my experience of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a lot of it. I mean, not necessarily did I get involved in any of it because honestly, I don't like the thought of being in jail, over a commission. I mean, it's kind of silly if you think about it. Yeah. And that's what can happen when you start dealing with fraud and things like that. And especially FHA was huge at the time. And so what I saw a lot being a listing agent was people trying to get bonuses on their commission. So the commission would be 3%, and they would come with an offer 3% plus, $25,000. Well, what are you doing there, right? That's called fraud, Right. And that's the FHA, that's the government. So you're going to jail if you get caught for that, most likely. So, I shied away from anything close to, being. But I saw it quite a bit, or saw the attempts of stuff like that. Yeah. It was very common, but the Dodd-Frank Act, by the way, came out in 2008 because everyone they didn't cross-check tax returns. So your wife would be very familiar with that, not getting involved in it, but and so you could take your tax return and show that you had all this income coming at the time, and then you had one that went to the IRS and one that went to the lender. Well, now you can't really do that because of the laws and things that were changed because of Dodd-Frank Act in 2008. So signs were, everywhere, kind of like they are now. It's like we were seeing it again, maybe not that level that we saw in 2008 because it was like fog and mirror, get a loan, right? Yeah. So the signs were everywhere, and the prices just kept going up, and that's the thing that's concerning. The prices can't just keep going up, kind of like they are now.
That was kind of like my next question too, because me being newer, right? We just seen the trend going up ever since I started in 2017. I mean, I remember in Whittier right here, I was selling homes for, $550, $650 for a single family. Now it's like you can't find a single family for less than $700, $750 in Whittier. So just the trend for me has been going way up. What do you see now going on in this market now? Because we've seen just astronomical prices going up.
Yeah, well, it's got to change. It can't keep, is my own opinion. Nobody's got the crystal ball, right? And I'm curious to hear what Coach says about this. But, I thought COVID was going to change everything in terms of it. I thought it was going to shut down the market or certainly cause it to shift. And we just blasted right through COVID. And I think that most of it is because we pumped all that money into the economy with everything we did, PPP, unemployment benefits, and all the things that we did caused now this inflation that we're going through and experiencing. At some point, something's got to give, right? Because we did all that, and the prices have been going up, and everybody can agree that's probably listening or watching. It can't keep going up and up and up. At one point, what goes up has to change and come down. And in some markets, we're seeing that, but not really a lot of the markets like you would think that it would have changed by now.
Yeah.
And so that is coming. It's around the corner. I'm certain of it, and we haven't even talked about commercial real estate yet, right?
Yeah.
So we go into that conversation later, but that's a whole nother conversation because that's obviously happening right now at a huge
I'm
level.
just curious on your thoughts on this, because some would argue, well, I can't see the prices going down because there's a lack of inventory simply, and there's just not enough housing for people to move in. So what's the counter argument to that?
Well, first let's hear from Coach.
That's exactly right. My economics professor would say it's a big P in the sky, and the big P in the sky is where supply crosses demand.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot more demand than there is supply. And that's why we're still seeing the interest rates creep up, and that's why the feds are really focusing on that to kind of tamper down the demand, because tamper down the demand that's there, because it's still there. On the commercial real estate front, if you look at, and I have looked at multifamily in Orange County, the first quarter, the number of transactions were half of what they were the year before, and that's because we're 500 basis points on the interest rate above. And when we talk about commercial real estate, it turns into a math equation eventually. And so there's a gap between what the bid is and what the ask is, because the sellers, they see prices going up everywhere else, and they feel that they should be able to participate in that. And from a buyer standpoint, they just, mathematically can't make it work.
Right.
And so it's kind of a wait and see idea to see what's going on as far as that goes. And so, intuitively, and you can learn this in Michael's class, is that if interest rates are going to go up, then the demand is going to go down, and the cap rates will also go up because there's more supply that's available, and that's just not happening right now. Cap rates are still fairly steady. If you can get anything below above a 5 cap rate, even in multifamily in Orange County, that's a deal. Which is 10 years ago, that would have been like, I'm not paying that much.
Exactly.
I'm not paying that much for that.
And then, like, in the news too, like I was reading an article, like Elon Musk, right? Twitter, it's based in San Francisco, like the main office, and he just stopped paying like the rent. Like, what do you guys think about that? I mean,
it's math. It's math.
Right.
And the second part to that, what he's talking about is, you can sue me. You can whatever you want to do to me, it's going to cost me less than what I'm going to lose by paying the rent.
Right.
And not having anybody in this building. I don't have any utility out of it, and that's where the whole math part comes into the equation. It's if you own a business, the primary purpose for owning a business, the primary purpose for buying investment property is, if I put $1 in, I want to get $8 out. Or not $8. If I put $100 in, I want to get $8 out. Or I want to get $10. I want to get a return on that, and there's no return on paying for an empty office.
Right.
Yeah.
And office space, I assume, is taking a huge hit due to COVID, right? I mean, everyone's on Zoom. A lot of companies are transitioning. Have you guys seen that as like a common trend, like with like office space?
Oh yeah, it's huge. But just getting back to Jonathan's, point about how do you see a shift coming in residential real estate when the market just keeps going and it's so hot, and what Coach was saying about supply and demand is true. But people have short-term memory. Remember that all it takes is an event of some sort, and the next thing you know, people are complaining about there's too much inventory. It wasn't that long ago that I can look back and look back at all the different shifts that I saw where people were complaining there's not enough inventory, and then they turn around, they're complaining there's too much inventory. It's a short-term memory that happens, and it happens in a blink. So just remember, what goes up must come down. And I agree with what Coach Cedric said there, that it's supply and demand, but you're starting to see it in certain parts of the country already where there is supply and those prices are dropping. It's just not across the board yet.
Yeah.
Right? And you have affordability. Keep an eye on that, right? That's a thing to watch as well, meaning how many people can actually afford to buy in those areas, and that's difficult right now in a lot of these areas, very difficult. So that usually is also a signal that something's got to give and something's going to change, right? So, but in commercial, we were just talking about this. There was a gal that did a podcast with another commercial broker, and she was talking about San Francisco being the values have dropped to 50% of the loan amounts there. So if you if you bought a building and you put down 30%, for example, that's gone. That equity's gone. And now we're talking what's left, which is that 70% loan, and the value's half that loan.
Wow.
So that's a huge problem, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just San Francisco, it's New York, Chicago, Seattle, the major cities, Chicago, right? The big downtown areas because of COVID. And it's a problem, and it's an issue that people are trying to address, trying to fix, trying to solve. One of the things that I saw the other day is the pickle malls. Right, pickle malls, and because pickleball has exploded. It's such a popular sport, and what's the issue there? Lack of courts. And so I saw that they're converting some malls. I can't remember where that was. It may have been San Francisco.
I think it was on the East Coast.
Was it?
And they converted a big box.
Huge big box mall.
Big box
and they call it a pickle mall, and it's just a bunch of courts. And I thought, wow, now we're talking. Let's do that. Let's do some of those things. And so as city planners and zoning starts, relaxing and stop being so strict on their rules and regulations and realizes we've got to do something, right? Then that opens up the door to, okay, here's some options, here's some solutions, because conversions, it's never going to come back. It's never going to be like it was before. People are spoiled. They've decided, right? I mean, listen, half the people watching this podcast are probably 90%,
exactly,
right? Don't work from an office anymore, or saying, I'm not going to anymore. And so those things it's never going to go back to the way it was. So they have to kind of figure that out at some level.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Someone sent me this a couple of days ago. You're asking about office occupancy. New York occupancy is 50% for office, and that's in their central business district. Los Angeles is basically 50%. San Francisco is 45%, meaning that's 55% vacant.
Remember when we were doing the 3-day class there in Irvine? It was completely empty. It's like we're looking around going, look at this space. That's Irvine.
And they've got massive office spaces there.
Yeah.
I'm curious because I was going to touch on that too. What are your thoughts on these conversions of spaces, right? Like down the street here, we have the Whitwood Mall with an old Sears building, huge building. I don't know how many hundreds of square feet, 3 stories high. And there's thoughts of, converting it into apartments or condominiums, whatever it is.
Yeah.
One, what does it look like for investors? Like, do they have to have deep pockets to pay cash for that kind of stuff, or is it ideal, or what are your thoughts overall?
Well, I think that lenders loan based on income usually, right, in commercial real estate. So they want to look, if you're going to loan me $10 million, are you going to loan it to me based on what I say I'm going to do? Probably not. You're going to loan it to me based on some history. We call it seasoned finance, seasoned loans, right? So lenders typically say, well, show me, let me see what you've been doing this. Let me see how those numbers have been looking. That's why people want due diligence, and they want numbers, history, copies of leases, copies of expenses. Lenders don't loan typically unless they can get those things, unless Coach Cedric has a relationship with us, the bank, and maybe he's a player, developer, and he's got lots of assets, and we've got some relationships, some loans that we've done. He's got track record. He can come to me now and say, "Here's my plan." That's a little different, right? And maybe I listen to him, but So you're shaking your head. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
they listen a little bit, and we set in on the Walker Dunlap presentation. And
Yeah.
they'll do that if you have a track record. They'll maybe work with the debt cover service ratio or something along those lines. A couple weeks ago, I set in on a presentation from Shop Off, and they're investors based here in Orange County, and they're redeveloping the Westminster Mall. And they bought the Westminster Mall. It has a Sears on it. It has a Sears Outpost. It has a lot of different parcel numbers that go along with it. And they're using those different parcels for different uses. So one's going to be a hotel. Another one's going to be a mixed use for restaurants and other activities. Other parts of it is going to be affordable housing. They have to have at least a 10 to 20% affordable housing that goes along with it. We talk about deep pockets. They closed on that last year. Their first in their goal, the first thing they're going to open is going to be in 2027.
Wow.
So it takes time, it takes money in order for them to be able to get there. And it also takes part of the community to be able to support that. And you were just talking about the other mall over here. Mm-hmm. The community is going to have to be involved with that because it's satisfying what their needs are. But it takes money and time, both.
Right.
Yeah, great point. And if you've ever, I live in Rossmore, right? And I remember they were talking about doing some things with that area and the mall, and people, they flip out, right? Because it's change, right? So it's like all these petitions roll out. It never happened. I can't remember what they were talking about doing there, but it didn't. It was shut down. No, I think it was a gym that they were going to do there, which nobody wants a gym in their backyard necessarily, right? 24-hour fitness or whatever.
Yeah,
but. Isn't that kind of common? What happens is in neighborhoods, if they don't like it, like you said, they're not going to support it and they're going to be against it. It's going to be very hard to get it approved.
Mm-hmm. Right.
At some point, it feels like, though, if these buildings are going to remain 55% vacant, and something's got to give, right? Like if we're short on housing and they have these massive spaces that are unutilized, essentially. Yeah. Does something have to give? Does the government step in and say, hey, we've got to do what we've got to do, and we're going to allow these people to now start building housing? Or what is that even? I guess we've never been in this situation, right?
Absolutely, you have. It's called eminent domain. And so, eventually, if there is a greater good for the community, the government will step in and say, this is a greater good. A good example of that is when they built the freeway system. A lot of, I don't want a freeway in my backyard. Well, the 75 freeway is going right through here. And here's some money for you. You see it going on now with the Olympics in Inglewood, with them being able to put the infrastructure together for the Olympics. And so there's some eminent domain going on over there also with the train lines that are coming in. And so, the community will win out. They'll get their say, but eventually, if push comes to shove, it has happened and it will happen.
Wow. Yeah, and if it doesn't get figured out, then what happens is you see REOs, right? The banks let it go because they have no choice or option. They don't want to do that. In 2008, they were talking about the big shadow inventory that was out there, and I kept thinking, I was like, oh, this is going to be great because I was poised for it, right? I don't mean it's going to be great for the market, or economy, but I was poised for it, so I was thinking this is going to be good from a business perspective as a broker. But they just kicked the can down the road. Why? Because if they would have foreclosed on all that property, all those assets, it would have just, caused major issues with the economy. And so no one wants to see that, and no lender wants to go down that path because they lose so much money. So that's the last thing that they're going to do is of some sort of foreclosure or REO. They want to try to work it out however they can, eminent domain, whatever, last resort. But if none of that happens, we will see some REOs, and then they'll get purchased at a certain amount per dollar, a price per dollar would be so much less, right? And then that investor will turn around and make the change with that asset. So you'll see some of that as well.
Yeah. In terms of commercial, what's like the booming sector in commercial right now that's really, taking the hype?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Booming is kind of relative, I think, more than anything else. Industrial is in high demand right now, and that's across not just in the Inland Empire. You'll see industrial. If there's a space, I just got a listing a few days ago over in Anaheim, and there's two large 200,000 square foot facilities that are going up over in that area. But you see industrial is probably the most resilient right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think also, though, it depends, right? Whenever somebody says, hey, how's the market? It's like such a loaded question because I'm in Long Beach and my market's Long Beach. And in Long Beach, we have North Long Beach, we have West Long Beach, we have Poly High, we have Virginia Country Club, we have all these different areas, right? And North Long Beach, I can be sitting in North Long Beach and I can drive literally across the street into Virginia Country Club, and it's a completely different market. So whenever we start saying what's high in demand, what's going well, how's the market, then I need to say, okay, where, what city, what zip code, what block, what product type, if we're talking commercial real estate, because in some markets, the opposite is true in industrial, meaning that there's a bunch of industrial everywhere and there's too much supply and it's not doing very well. So it just really depends on where you're looking. But in general, what Coach Cedric was talking about is true, that probably industrial is probably the number one product type across the board, and then probably multifamily, and then maybe retail and office being last.
Yeah.
To touch on that, I have a question for you guys. I'm a little bit illiterate when it comes to commercial real estate. I'm sure some of the listeners might be like me. What types of businesses are using industrial spaces, and what do they use them for? What do you see?
Well, woodworking, any kind of manufacturing, medical marijuana, huge, right? Amazon and medical marijuana were the major cause of the lack of supply, for sure. That two huge money markets right there just sucked up so much space. There's lots of anything else you can think of?
There's a lot of the Amazon stuff. Primarily, it's last mile. If you think about anything that you use on a daily basis, that eventually has to come through a warehouse in some way, shape, form, or fashion, whether it's being manufactured there and delivered directly to you, or if it's being consolidated in some location, or if it's being put on a train or put on a truck. It has to go through some sort of warehouse, and you see a lot now with the last mile delivery. So you'll see even smaller footprint locations that have a need for space that goes along with that. A lot of manufacturers, your T-shirts, your hats, all of those folks, a lot of them are local.
Yeah, we sold a couple of properties, and some of the clients that were, said that they're like really doing well. They have these like drop shipping like warehouses where they're housing inventory for Amazon and for trucks to come pick it up and ship it out, to people. So yeah, I mean, I could imagine. We had a commercial listing that Jonathan shot for us in Artesia, and it was a steel building, I believe Class C, right? Class C building, right? Still learning the commercial language.
There you go.
But the number one complaint we had is it's not big enough. It was only like 5,000 square feet, and everyone needed we need 10,000 at least, right?
Hey.
Many of the clients that came, they were like, this is too small. But it was a perfect location, they said, because you're right off the 605. You got the 91 right there. So it was a great location. But yeah, they all said it was too small. The height clearance, wasn't there. And it's actually
like a commercial guy. What was the power? How much power did it have?
Actually, yeah, it had good power. It did. It had good power. But
and the dock doors were all okay and everything. No, I'm just kidding.
No loading docks. That was another complaint. But what's interesting to me, and I talk about it with my dad, is commercial. Well, in regular, just selling a house, right? People, the buyer, is the buyer qualified? You got to go find the property, right? But commercial, it's the opposite, right?
Right.
Does the property, qualify, right?
Unless it's an owner user, if it's an SBA, Small Business Administration,
right.
51% or more being occupied by the buyer, and that's a good way to go too. By the way, it's very common, and you can get a good loan, better terms. Then they're going to look more at that borrower and their P&L of their company and things like that.
So I want to touch on that too. SBA, so someone that owns a business that's currently renting their place that wants to buy their own place, they have to occupy, you said 51%?
Or more, yeah.
51% of the building or more. And then the other 49% they could, lease out for extra income for their business, basically?
Yeah, and COVID caused all kinds of great programs to launch. And I don't know that a lot of those are still around, but I think some of them are still around. And
some are still around, and interest rates are higher now, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, interest rates are higher.
What do interest rates look like in that
I just saw some around 8.5, 9.
Oh, wow.
And so when you got a 90% loan, the math, again, it's hard for the math to work sometimes unless you have a business that's really generating a lot of income, or you have a 5,000 square foot place where it's not as much.
Right.
That's $2 or $3 million. Yeah.
So if someone wants to go SBA, they're probably looking at about 10% that they're going to have to put down minimum.
Sure.
Yeah.
For SBA. Okay. Yeah. So that's good for some business owners.
Attractive, sure.
I know that's what you were looking at too,
even
right?
myself, I was looking into something similar for, warehouse space so I can house my lighting, camera equipment, studio.
2,000 square feet a good
2,000 is probably suitable. That's probably right up my alley.
Holler at me after the podcast.
Yeah. Well, we have to have a discussion depending on location, because proximity to the freeway is really, really crucial. But
tell him about your dream, man.
Half mile off the 91 freeway.
There you go. What city is it in?
Anaheim Hills.
Okay.
There you go.
Anaheim Hills. Okay.
Well, what's your dream, Jonathan?
My dream building. So, in the front of the building would be a coffee shop, right? This is just something I wanted to do for a long time. And going to college, I always struggled to find a good coffee shop to sit down, do work in, and just help other aspiring entrepreneurs, students, whatever it is, have a place to sit down, do work, and just get out of the, hustle and bustle of everything else. So having that coffee shop, and also it being a profitable business on its own. And then behind that are doors, to a warehouse, to a studio, to where this type of setup here that we're in is a room on its own, where somebody can step in and you can rent the space from me, or we can, film your podcast or whatever it is. And that's just one room in the warehouse. And we have another set and another set and another set, all with their own dedicated cameras, equipment, and everything to create content for business owners, individuals, influencers, whatever it is, right? And so just this content creation, warehouse, coffee shop type of thing. And so that's something I'm working towards, building out the team and building up the capital for that, and possibly raise some money down the road. But that's something great. I want to do.
Yeah, good for you. I love that idea. I think I was talking to Jeff Senior and Junior here about somebody about this, and I always want to do filming and podcasts and videos and things like that. So I'll do a lot of those things at an office, my office, or my house, whatever. And then half the time, 90% of the time, as you guys know, is I got to get the camera set up right, and the tripod, and the mic, and the lighting, and it's like, it's just a pain, right? And it's like, then you do a 5-minute video clip or whatever, and it's like, I'm exhausted, right? And so to be able to go have a cup of coffee or a drink or something, and
sometimes you don't end up doing the work, right? Because it's just so much to set it up.
Yeah, exactly.
So the idea is someone like you who's busy, right? You're on a subscription basis, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever it is. You come in on your scheduled day and time. You record your 5 to 10 videos, and we'll say, hey, thank you. We'll see you next week. We'll send you the content in 1 week's time, and grab a coffee on your way out.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
I love that.
And it's just... You have clients on a subscription basis, and the coffee shop is also kind of a driver of traffic for people to see what businesses in the back of the building.
Good coffee, right? Good.
Oh yeah,
we see a lot of coffee
Subscription's one of my favorite words.
Yeah, right.
That's one of my favorite words.
Yeah, it's once you get that first subscription client, or it like
once you get that credit card the second time, you're like, okay, now we're doing something.
Yeah, sure. You can count on that every month. It's pretty nice.
Well, good for you for having that goal and dream, man. Follow it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I kind of want to transition here. So I hear a lot of people that are in commercial real estate, and they always say, oh man, I wish I would have got in sooner, right? So you guys have a coaching company, right? The NCREA is what it's called. And what does that stand for our listeners?
The National Commercial Real Estate Association.
Awesome. Okay. And you coach people on how to transition, right, and get into commercial. So who are your students that are coming in, and what is it that you can do for them?
Sure. So the students that come in are primarily agents that discover that they want something else, right? And so they're 90% of who comes in this is what happens. It's what happened to me. Yeah. Somebody, they're doing a residential deal. You're out there right now. I know you are. And somebody came to you and said, hey, can you help me with this commercial deal? You do residential. Yeah. I know you do residential. Do a good job. I know you. I like you. I trust you, which is key to sales, right? And we have this commercial space. See, I don't want to come over here and go try to find Coach Cedric because I don't know Coach Cedric yet. So I got to trust the guy, right? And so I already trust you. Yeah. So I'm going to come to you first, most likely. Most agents have somebody come to them at some point in their career. Could be a week, could be a year, could be 10 years. But at some point, someone's going to come to you and say, hey, can you help me with this commercial deal? And at that moment, they go, yes. And then they also go, oh no, what do I do? And so they start looking for help, and boom, my name comes up, our company comes up, they show up in a class. That's how most of it comes to us.
Nice.
The issue with that is that it's kind of late in the game. You should have been in the class a long time ago, right? You should be in Coach Cedric's training or coaching with us, right? So that we can prepare you for that moment. Because what happens to a lot of agents, unfortunately, is they have it come at them, but they don't know what to say, or they say the wrong thing, or they don't say the right thing, and the investor is realizing it and going, well, you don't know what you're doing, right? And they're not going to be not rude about it, but they're going to politely go away. So most agents lose a deal or two before they finally go, oh, I should go to some training, right? Unfortunate. That's very normal.
So you guys are the ones to provide that training, and hopefully people find you early enough to where they come in, sit down, and you go through the
Jonathan, it's like, as a broker, one of the things that would drive me nuts was I would say, go learn how to write an offer to brand new agents, right? Brand new agents out there, some of you guys out there right now, go learn how to write an offer. Don't wait for the client to say, hey, I got it, well, let's do this, I'm ready to buy, right? Because then you're scrambling. But inevitably, they don't listen to that, or they just don't get to it. Why? Because they're so busy. Yeah. I'm guilty of this stuff too. I do all this stuff. Mm-hmm. I've done all this. And so they don't learn, and so then it's midnight. Hey, Coach Cedric, can you show me how to write this offer? Can you help me? I got to get it done in the morning, right? Well, that's not the way to do that. Take the deposit receipt class, take the purchase agreement class, so it's under your belt, and now you've got it done and you're prepared. So the same thing here with commercial real estate. Don't wait until a deal falls on your lap and show up in our class thinking, can you help me with this deal? Because we're here teaching a class, right? It's very hard for us to help you specifically on that deal with what that deal needs. It needs a coach. It needs a mentor at that moment, right? Not a training. So you want to get some training under your belt as much as you can before anything starts happening to you, right? So you're prepared, right?
Yeah, be prepared before.
And in commercial, it's a little bit different from what I understand, right? So everyone that does regular real estate, like myself, they are part of a board, right? You have your board dues, your MLS, right? What is it with commercial? Is there a board for commercial, or?
There is a board for commercial, and I'd say probably 50%, maybe a few more, are not part of a board in general. And there's a variety of different reasons, especially if they're interacting with the residential agent, because what a commercial agent will soon find out, let alone the client, is that the residential agent doesn't know what they're doing.
Right.
And so the mindset for a lot of commercial agents is, why should I give them half of my commission and do their work also? So they struggle with getting phone calls back and things like that, and then that's the kind of stuff that you call the board for. They didn't respond to my call, or they they didn't answer my question, or something along those lines. So they don't have to deal with that aspect of it. So that's a big part of it. There's still a code of ethics across the board, but that eliminates a big part of having to come and sit down. I think Michael's part of. Are you on one of the ethics boards or something?
Yeah, arbitrator.
You don't want to come talk to him and let him listen to your story. He was mean to me. He didn't return my phone call and stuff like that. So some companies require that you're not part of a board for that very reason, you can focus primarily on that.
Yeah, so your resimercial firms, your resimercial companies out there, if you're doing residential and you're also doing commercial, like at a company level as well, then you're resimercial, right? So there's a lot of those companies. I don't need to list them all, but we could just look around, right? There's a ton of these companies that are doing both commercial and residential, and they have to be a member of the board because they need the MLS. So they're a member of the board as a broker, and when the broker is a member of the board, the agents all have to fall under that category as well. So that's what requires agents to join boards like their broker. Otherwise there's problems usually that occur. Where in commercial real estate, if it's a full-time commercial firm, Colliers, JLL, Marks and Millichap, these full-time commercial firms don't do Sperry. They don't do residential. They don't like it. They don't want it. They don't touch it usually, unless it's in some sort of bulk or something. And so because of that, they don't need the boards. They don't need the MLSs. And so that's why a lot of times they're not also members of boards. But there is a code of ethics that should be followed in commercial real estate, but not always. It's kind of a wild west atmosphere out there, unfortunately, in commercial real estate. And there's no crying in commercial real estate. Meaning if somebody won't call you back, you can't go crying to their broker. Your broker's not going to hear it, right? It's like what Coach Cedric was just talking about. So those are some differences.
What's like the marketing like? Because you talk about, like myself, right? We're doing open houses, a little bit some postcards, right? What's like, I guess, a main like lead generator in like commercial?
Oh, you guys are not going to want to hear this answer, I'm sure. But we're going to let Coach tackle this one first because I know where it's going.
You got to pick up the phone.
All right, there you go.
You got to pick up the phone, and it's one thing. We just got this lesson the other day from the owner of our company, and that is there are a lot of good agents out there that know what they're doing. They can understand the math. They can understand how to talk to people, but not enough people know who they are. Right. And the only way for them to find out who you are is picking up the phone and calling them repeatedly. And it takes 6, 7, 8. You guys are marketing folks. It takes 6, 7, 8 times before they finally it clicks. It's like, oh yeah, that's what he does, and that's what he can do for me. Right. And so you got to pick up the phone. That's the best tool, the most efficient tool all day long. You can supplement that with postcards, emails, texts, knocking, going in and delivering packages. But the most efficient way is picking up the phone. Is that what you were going to say?
That's what I was going to say too. Yeah, as you know, Coach, we have the 5 pillars of going after commercial property owners that we talk about. 5 pillars: calls, doors, commercial investment, networking events, social media, and marketing. Okay, those are the 5 pillars. But obviously, let's look at marketing. Costs money, very expensive. You got to do it, should do it, and there's lots of ways to do that. Social media, you got to do it, should do it. But it's not always inexpensive, and it's not always easy, especially for folks like me who don't know how to do it. Right, I got to come to folks like you to say, "Hey, help me do this." Right. Commercial investment networking events, costs money to do that. Doors doesn't really cost any money, right? But how do I knock doors in commercial real estate? So most people don't know how to do that, right? So we have to talk with you about how you do that, right? And teach you how to do that. And not a lot of people are comfortable knocking doors, right? So there's a little bit of a downside to that as well. Calls, though, are a must do. If you what I talk about is do all of them, do all 5 over and over and over and over and over again, and you're gonna succeed at the highest level, right? I can sit here and tell you what to do, but going and doing it is another story, and making those calls is critical. I agree with that.
For those in commercial real estate making calls, are there any tools you guys are using that are helping you make more contacts faster or more efficiently?
I don't. There's a couple folks that use dialers that do that. I just call. I have a phone that's dedicated for calling, and that's what I do. And one of the steps that goes along with that is you got to have a reason to call, especially someone that owns a property. And the calls go right through. They never hang up on you because you're calling about putting more money in their pocket. We do role play twice a week, and one of the role plays that we had this week is a guy that owned 7 properties within a multifamily properties within a community, and I called him on his cell phone at 8:30 in the morning, and we talked for 20 minutes because he knew exactly why I called. He knew that I knew that he owned the properties. He knew that I had his cell phone number, so he knows that you know what you're talking about. He knew that we knew that another property was for sale, and that's how we communicate and connect with those folks. After the call is over with, he gets a letter. Thank you for the call we had today. Here's who we are. Here's our card. And those are the kind of things that we do. But you got to call them. And the tools that we use are basically the kind of tools to get their information more than anything else. And so, a lot of times Michael talked about, door knocking is not that efficient. You'll call residential folks and they'll ask, how'd you get my number? Because I can't remember. I really can't remember the last time I called somebody on their cell phone and they said, how'd you get my number? I mean, they know you're doing work. You had to pay to get their number. Yeah. It's like this guy had to do some work to find out who I was and what I'm doing. And so one of the first things we do when we call them is, hey, I'm calling you because you own 1313 Mockingbird Lane. and then you go from there.
Yeah, see how he's doing that. That's huge, right? And so we do use, Mojo, some of those dialers like Coach was talking about. I've seen telemarketers. I've used telemarketers. It's a little easier in residential than it is in commercial because of what Coach was just talking about. You got to know a little more. But I've seen all of that, and that's all ways to do it, right? But at the end of the day, there's nothing like the rainmaker. Picking up that phone, and don't just pick up the phone and blindly start calling. I mean, talk about setting yourself up for failure and total rejection. Learn the market, understand the cap rates, price per square foot, cost per door, how many properties are on the market roughly in this zone of product type that I'm specializing in. Be a student, be a master, right? Because those investors are going to chew you up and spit you out, right? If you contact them and you don't know what the game, right? It's not going to work. So don't go through that rejection. Don't do that to yourself. Go into this the right way. The way to do it is get trained and get a coach, right? That's the right way to do that. And I'm not just saying it because I'm a training coach. I'm just telling you that's the way to do it. That's what any commercial or a mentor, somebody. Right. But learn the market. You got to learn what's going on, and then you can start. And then there's scripts and things. But don't just call. You got 10 seconds, maybe 20 seconds to get someone's attention, right? So how do you do that? Well, if I'm calling you and I'm saying, hey, we just listed a property, it's not on the market yet, it's very similar to your commercial space at 123 Main Street, thought you might want to know about it or might want to share it with some other folks, I got your attention, right? Because you're going to want to know what's going on because you're a player, you're an investor. So lead with value, but you got to know what you're doing in order to do that.
Yeah.
And if you do, in that same call sequence, we called another guy who, do you have any, I'm calling you because of whatever. And he said, I don't have time to talk right now. Well, I'm calling you about a property that's for sale. We couldn't get him off the phone. I mean, by the time we were done, well, I'm on the board there and that place caught on fire. This guy takes in a lot of vagrants. They know what you're talking about and you're adding value, like Michael said.
Yeah.
Along the way.
I think too the big thing for agents is to invest in themselves, man. Everyone's looking for that magic pill or magic product that's gonna get them all these leads and a lot of crap out there, right? But the answer is simple. Learn from someone who's been there before, has the experience, has the know-how, and really invest in yourself. I mean, even with myself too. I mean, I had to spend a lot of time doing research and watching YouTube videos, reading books, listening to podcasts, and putting in the work. But it just seems like especially the younger generation, they just want to buy something that'll take them there, right?
Yeah, you gotta do the work.
A vehicle that's supposed to take them to the next level, So
I was just, Jeff, I sorry to interrupt you. I was just saying this in this class I was in today, that I'm seeing this trend, and it's just jumped off way out since COVID. And what's happening, what I'm seeing is, and this is not just local, this is across the board, is people aren't showing up. They don't want to work, right? And just look at what's going on in the world. It's hard to find talent. It's hard to get people to go to work and actually get out of bed or stop watching Netflix or whatever they're doing. I don't know. But what I'm noticing is people saying, hey, I'll be there, right? But then when the time comes, there's literally a quarter of what they said that was going to be there that is there, but the quarter that's there is hungry, and the quarter that's there is ready to go to work and hungry and wants to do the business and wants to make some money, right? Yep. And so kudos to you guys, because you're obviously in that quarter. I can see it all over you with what you're doing here. And if you're out there watching, listening, and you're that 0.25% and you want this, you've got a huge leg up, because if you just show up right now, you're going to be in a spot where so many other people just aren't even there, right?
Yeah.
So there's going to be a large gap between, haves and have-nots, or whatever you want to call it. But it's interesting. A lot of people say that, kind of touching on that, work from home is efficient and they get more things done and all that, but I don't see it. Like, it doesn't. I know it doesn't work for me, at least, and I don't know about you guys, and if you guys deal with that in your space. I'm not sure that you do in commercial real estate, but do you think that work from home, like for a lot of these big tech companies and all this stuff, is efficient, or is it like, is it going to be sustainable?
I don't know if it's sustainable or not. It's efficient in some manners, but what happens is that you have the Jeff seniors and the Jeff juniors, and he's experienced a lot more than you have along the way. Or as I mentioned, I'll use myself as an example with Paul. And that is, here, let me show you how this is done. What are you doing right now? Hey, get in the car with me. Let's go. I got to go on a listening appointment and those kind of things. You don't get that by working remotely along the way. So, I'm sitting in this Lexus. Ooh, this is nice leather here. This guy is working, and he's sticking to his 6% commission. It's like, is that negotiable? No. And there's another thing to go, but you're learning all of those things because you're working with folks who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Along the way.
Yeah, I don't think sustainable either because the D personality styles of business owners are, hey, what are you doing? Why and how do I know you're actually working, right? And so you see that with Musk and all these companies, they tried it and then now they're like, we don't like this because we like to have our employees here, right, and hold them accountable. And so you're seeing a blend though because everyone's kind of wanting to blend, right? A little variety, hybrid, and commercial real estate. So I have these 9 things. I have a list because so many people come to me and say, I'm thinking about getting into commercial. I'm a residential agent. How do I do it? And I'll say, okay, what questions do you have? And they'll say, I don't know. I don't even know what to ask, right? And so I created this document. Just here's 9 things that typically come up that you need to do in order to go into commercial real estate. And one of them is collaborate, don't isolate. And COVID caused this isolation with so many people, and they're not coming out of it. In most cases, there's, like I said, it's 75% of them are stuck in isolation. They are not coming out for whatever reason. I don't know what those reasons are, but that's really challenging because if we have a deal, it's an industrial deal, let's say, or what multifamily or whatever, I need help. I'm going to say, hey, coach, what do you think of this? I'm going to say, should this be a 5 cap?
You couldn't say that any clearer.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I miss that. I really do miss that.
That collaboration.
Oh, absolutely. We used to argue about the contracts. It's like, what does this mean here? And literally knock down, drag out arguments, and then go have lunch. It wasn't an argument against us. It's like, no, this is what it means. So this is what I would do. But you don't have that, and I do miss that.
Yeah. Sure. And it's tough to do that over Zoom. There's nothing like being there.
Yeah, it's tough to do it over Zoom. We can still role play over Zoom, but I miss the whole idea of being able to say, well, how would you price this? I think I get folks that get tired of me calling them. It's like, hey, this is what I have. Paul, I call him. Hey, I'll call him on a Sunday. Hey, I'm trying to do this. What do you think? Are you nuts? Those kind of things. You need somebody to tell you that you're nuts.
Yeah. And remember, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Remember, in residential, they do silly stuff like pizza nights, cold calling pizza night, right? Why do they do that? Because it's fun. They make it funner. Everyone, let's come together. Let's have some pizza. Let's, I can sit here and laugh at you. I can listen to you and learn from you. You can laugh at me, right? Ring the bell, ding, 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 when you put a deal on the board. It's silly stuff, but everybody loves it, right? And loves to be recognized. And those things work. If you're sitting on an island by yourself, trying to grind, it's like, right? It's hard.
You need that community.
You need the community and the support and the help.
Case in point, so a couple of weeks ago, I photographed properties, make videos of properties, right? I went up to Lake Arrowhead, beautiful home, $1 million home. This guy works for Apple, and he's selling it because he can no longer work from home. Apple's requiring that they come back to the office, I think at least like part-time, half-time. Mm-hmm. And I think I agree. I don't think it's sustainable. I think, it starts with Apple, one of the biggest companies in the world. They're going to get their employees back in the office. And then, maybe the other smaller companies will start following suit and people will start going back because they've probably realized we need this community. We need these people in person to have those debates about contracts and have those little arguments and whatever it is and those pizza nights. I think that stuff is important, and it's hard when there's no community. It's really hard to feel a part of something and succeed.
For sure.
So if anyone is out there that's listening and they want to transition into commercial, where should they go to find you guys?
Well, I think Coach is a commercial broker, right? And a great resource, a great contact for you out there. If you are needing questions or a mentor type relationship, that's what he can bring to the table for you. And then he could talk about where it is and, if it was out of area or out of wheelhouse or whatever, what he would do. But that's what I would say for that. If you're wanting to learn how to get into commercial real estate, you can go to our website, thencrea.com, www.thencrea.com, and just plug in. We have a lot of different stuff we do live, we do virtual, we have a free series that we do every Thursday. So tomorrow I'm doing product types. And then the next week it's going to be listing presentation, and then the next week it might be advanced commercial prospecting, and the next week it might be language of the investor. But you can just start going to stuff like that and tasting it and seeing, is this something I like? Can I see myself doing this, right? Yeah. And maybe it's not, and that's okay, right? So those would be some things that you could do relatively easy. And then from there, if you started digging it like I did, I fell in love with it. Remember, I was like, oh, this is all me. I'm all in. And what I did was I took a class. It was a commercial class. It was 3 hours long, twice a week for 6 months. So when I did that deal, I was like, this is great. And then I got a flyer in my box for a commercial training, and this is a sign, and I still am just convinced it's a sign today. Yeah. So I go in this class, and I just couldn't wait for the next class, right? And so it was all me. It was talking to me from day one. So maybe that's you out there, and you'll know pretty quickly, I'm loving this. And if you're loving it, then you can plug into other classes, 1 day, 3 day, coach with us, all kinds of things that you can do.
Awesome.
Anything else?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, the easy way to do that, and if it's free as for me is what I like to say. And so the Thursday classes, the Thursday sessions, those are free. Another low bar, and again, as you say, invest in yourself. You can get into the monthly group coaching for less than $100 a month. And if you want to get ahead of the wave instead of waiting until the opportunity comes, and you can start learning things about that in a larger group and have the tools to be able to do it, that's another good way. And eventually, you learn your way into getting into the 3-day class, getting into an advanced class. But start if it's free as for me. Start for that. At least start learning the language of commercial real estate, and in that way you can figure out and you can see if it speaks to you or not.
And one of the things I also want to mention is that we hang out with players, right? And Jeff Senior's mentioned this several times over there. I keep pointing to Jeff Senior, who's off camera. And Coach Cedric, you can tell he knows what he's doing, knows what he's talking about. He's been coaching for us for almost 5 years. So if he wasn't doing a good job with coaching members, it wouldn't work, right? Because we'd be getting complaints. So it's showing that he knows what he's doing. We also have another coach, Robert, in Dallas, Texas, that's boots on the ground, full-time commercial agent. Just did a $300,000 commission on a lease that he closed. So he's in the trenches, and he's also one of our coaches. And then we'll bring in, I mentioned Neil Sherman with Sperry, 40 years of experience. I'll bring in a medical marijuana specialist. I'll bring in a leasing specialist. So DST, there's all kinds of fields and things that you can get into, and other areas of interest, taxes, CPAs, all kinds of things, right? That we that we bring to the table, so you can learn from all these people, not just Michael, not just Cedric.
That's good to have a breadth of knowledge, right? Not just go deep on one subject. I want to ask you guys one last question. I ask every guest this question, so let's just take it back a little bit, right? Let's go to 1989. Michael, trying to reach that goal of selling multiple houses for $125,000 sales price, and then back in your early days when you were at Waste Management and they're going in a different direction and they want to part ways or whatever it is. If you can go back to those 2 times in your lives, what would you tell yourself?
Specialize. I would say, get into this, and as we talk about learning the market, learn one thing really well and be the best at it. I mean, if you can specialize in one thing, whether it's multifamily or whatever it is, I would say now it really wouldn't have mattered if the day I got started then and all I do is multifamily, it would be different than what it is today. It doesn't mean I can't do other stuff now, but the longer and deeper that you can go into one specific thing, I think that's very valuable, is to know what you know, and other people know what you know. So I'd say specialize.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And, look at yourself and think about what you're attracted to, right? So industrial, we talked about, loading docks, oil, grease, dirt, maybe jeans, maybe a t-shirt, is that me? Do I like that? Or do I not like that? Do I like the retail stuff? Do I like multifamily? Do I like office? Probably suit, tie, personality style type environments for the most part. So look at also that and yourself when you're trying to figure out something to specialize. I would also say, man, I could have bought real estate for $100,000, right? A bunch of it, and think about this, $125,000, I told you, 20% down. What is that? 50,000, right? Well, that same property today, like you said, is 700,000. So do the same 20% down. That's $140,000. That's a big difference between $50,000 and $140,000. But now today, that property would be all equity. How many stories have we heard? How many rich people do we know? Wealthy people that we know that did it through real estate. I went for Mother's Day down there at I won't name the restaurant, but we went down. We were sitting there having lunch, and there's this guy sitting next to me, so I started having the conversation with him. He's telling me how he bought this building, a commercial building right there on PCH in Seal Beach. He paid $3 million for it, and then sold it for 12, and I'm like, it's like, so there's story after story after story of this, right? And it's never too late. When's the time to buy? Today.
Now.
Because like you said, Jonathan, how is it ever going to stop going up, up, and up? Well, it won't really, but it shifts up and then down a little bit, up and down a little bit. Historically, though, what's it done?
Over time.
Yeah. See, so it's a great, don't worry about the interest rates. Just if it can make sense and you can, don't lose money. No one wants a negative cash flow. That's no fun. But if you can make it cash flow and you can hang on, I wish somebody would have told me that just when I was 21 and I started selling real estate. Instead of, I did 6 units, and then I'll shut up. 6 units on Hollywood Boulevard for $600,000, and I was so worried about double ending this thing for the commission, which is exactly what I did. I like, it's a big commission, but wait a minute, what's that worth today? What's 6 units on Hollywood Boulevard?
Los Angeles per unit, it's about $425,000 a unit.
So that's $5 million, right? Almost $5 million. Yep. Is my math right?
Yep.
So I sold it for $600,000, and then what was this? The '90s, and it's worth $5 million. Should I have bought it? So that would be my advice.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. We'll include the links to all of your materials down in the show notes, so anybody can grab that stuff. Absolutely. And find you guys online.
Thanks for having us. Good questions.
Yeah, great questions. Lots of fun. And thank you guys as well. And really, congratulations to you, because you're obviously up and coming. You guys are on your way. Good job.
Thank you guys.
Yep. Be sure you guys like, comment, subscribe down below, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Good. Cool. We'll be working for you guys.